Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video, I'm going to be going over a new build that I wanted to try out and I absolutely fell in love with. It's the Phoenix Strike Assassin. I know there aren't many martial art builds out there, but I believe this one is highly underrated. I'll be going over the stats, skills that I use, and gear that I believe that make this build shine, and show a little bit of gameplay as well. And as always, I'll have a link in the description where you could download the character files for free and add it to your single player roster for the PC. Before we get started, if you could please like this video and subscribe, help me grow, I would greatly appreciate it. And also comment below on what character or items you'd like me to go over next. If you have any suggestions about this build or questions, don't be afraid. Comment below and let's talk about it. So the Phoenix Strike Assassin, it's a martial arts build that uses Phoenix Strike to build up charges and then uses a different attack to trigger them. It can charge up to 3 times and each charge that you do is a different element. So for instance, your first charge is a meteor, your second charge would be chain lightning, and your third charge is pretty much like a frozen orb. You can determine which charge you want to release by how many times you click Phoenix Strike. So if you're fighting a lightning immune and you don't have a mercenary with infinity, you'd hit once with Phoenix Strike. I put Phoenix Strike on my right click here, and then once with your triggering move, whatever you choose, I'll go over those in a minute, and it will release the meteor. So if you wanted to do all 3 charges on Phoenix Strike, the first charge that would release would be the Chaos Ice Bolt. Like I said, it's just like a frozen orb. And the second time you hit with your triggering move to release the next charge, it would be Chain Lightning, and then the last one that you have left would be the meteor that falls. It's pretty fun when you get a big group of enemies and you have all 3 charges going. They all hit and all the elements go everywhere. It just looks awesome, and it just makes you feel like the build is just really coming alive. So for skills, for the martial arts skills, I max out Phoenix Strike. That's your main skill you'll be using for the charge ups. I'll max out Fists of Fire. That's your synergy for the Phoenix Strike, and it'll help out your meteor damage. Then I max out Claws of Thunder. That's another synergy. And Blades of Ice is the last synergy for Phoenix Strike. Some people only put a few points here. They don't think you need that much cold damage, but it's all personal preference here. I maxed it out because it's a synergy and it adds to the cold damage. I then put 1 point into Tiger Strike and Cobra Strike. Those are prerequisites to get Phoenix Strike. And then I put 1 point into all the skills on the right column. So Dragon Talon, Dragon Claw, Dragon Tail, and Dragon Flight. Those will be your triggering moves. And another triggering move is your normal attack. So these are what you use to trigger Phoenix Strike. So from those triggering moves, my favorite one that I ended up using after experimenting was Dragon Tail. It just kicks really hard and it does a lot of damage. I like it. But if you want to teleport in between enemies, use Dragon Flight. I'll show an example here in a second, but it helps you teleport from monster to monster, especially if you're going to do the chaos and you want to get through the river of flames, kind of skipping through instead of running into that little maze. I know it's not a big maze, but it really helps. So here's an example of Dragonflight. So those are your martial arts skills and what I maxed out for that skill tree and the triggering moves. So for shadow skills, I pretty much put a point into one of everything. You don't have to put a point into Venom. I just did it just because I like Venom and it's a little bit of poison damage. But what you will use here is Burst of Speed or Fade. It depends on your personal preference. If you want more defensive, I would go with Fade here. It gives resistance, damage reduction. It really helps out. If you want faster attack rate or running speed, I would go with Burst of Speed. So these are the 2 routes you could go. You could either go Fade for more defensive if your resistances are lacking, or if you want to be more offensive, go with Burst of Speed. Here, you don't need a point into Shadow Master, but I like my little shadow following me around, so I put a point into it. I think it is just fun to have. You will also use Cloak of Shadows. It really helps out. It lowers enemies' defense. It boosts your defense, especially if you don't have the powerhouse gear for endgame. It helps. Also, what I did when I was experimenting with this build, I was experimenting with claws, shield and a claw, and all sorts of stuff. I put a couple extra points into weapon block, but as I looked at weapon block, at level 16, you only get 56%, and I put 1 more into it, and at 17 it's still 56%. Once you hit 20 it's only 57, so I think that's just a waste of a few points. So don't worry about maxing weapon block, it doesn't go up very much. You could also put your spare points into claw mastery if you really want to. Improves your damage, improves your attack rating if you got extra and you just want to throw them in there. And that's it for the shadow skill tree. For traps, you really don't use traps. You're a martial arts assassin, but if you want to have fun with your extra points, you could probably put some points into Death Sentry and all the prerequisites. Death Sentry will help with like corpse explosion and a little bit of lightning damage. But again, it's whatever you want to do. If you have the points left over and just want to mess around. So traps, you really don't touch. So they're not necessary. You really don't need to touch the skill tree at all. And that's it for the skills. So for stats, it's pretty straightforward. For strength, you put enough for your gear. So my base value is 100. I put a little bit more in because I am using a shield. I will go over that once I get to the gear section here. Dexterity, I put enough in just to wear my gear. Claws require a little bit more dexterity. So depending on what type of claw you have, just make sure you have enough to cover that. And then the rest goes into vitality for life. That's it for the stats. So let's get to the gear. So for gear, at first I tried out what guys were saying. They said try Bartuk's Claws or Chaos or Fury. It just depends on which one you wanted. So I tried the Bartuk's. It's not bad. I have a F upgraded Zotted one to make it indestructible and have a little bit more damage. That's why I chose an F one. It's pretty good if you can't afford high level gear yet. It's a pretty mid-level to get. And if it's at a regular level, not upgraded, your level requirement is 42, so it's a pretty good claw all around for mid-level up if you don't have the budget for it. But messing around with gear, I really ended up liking the Fury Claw. It's just a little expensive with the jaw rune unless you're playing single player, or if you want to download these files, like I said, I'll have the link in the description for it. I really ended up liking a shield and claw build. I always like Phoenix Shield. If you saw my Fury Druid video, then you know that I like the Phoenix Shield. It's just, I think it's an awesome PVM shield, even though the strength's a little high. It's just, I think it's fun. It's an expensive rune word too, but it's fun. But if you don't like shield and claw build on the assassin, then you could always go with 2 Bartuks, just regular Bartuks, or if you want to go with a Jade Talon that has resistance on it. If you're lacking with resistance, it gives to the martial arts skills, to the shadow skills, which will really help you. It gives enhanced damage and faster hit recovery. So it's a good claw if you need more defensive measures. So for the rest of my gear, I saw in some builds it said use Griffins. I still did good damage with it. However, I ended up liking Andariel's better. It gives +2 to skills. It gives attack speed, life leech, strength, and you could always put a lightning facet in there. So I really like the Andariel's helmet. I also use Chains of Honor for various reasons: resistance, strength, skills, damage reduction. It's the best armor you could probably get for this build. You could go with Enigma. It gives the +2 to skills, but doesn't give resistance. And with Dragonflight, you could teleport kind of between monsters. It's not the same teleport, but I really like Chains of Honor for this. For my amulet, I go with High Lords, Deadly Strike, attack speed, 1 to skills, lightning resistance, pretty good amulet. For belts, I go with Arachnid. Again, this build is very skilled based, so Arachnid gives 1 to skills. You can't beat it. For rings, I go with Bolcathos just for the more life base of it. It still gives 1 to skills. You could always go with Stone of Jordan if you want, and I always go with my other one as a Ravenfrost. It gives attack rating plus the dex, and it gives cannot be frozen. For boots, Shadow Dancers, they're pretty high strength, so it's all depends on what you want, but I like these boots to use. You can always go with Gore Riders. Those are a very good alternative. So for gloves, you want to look for something with +3 to martial arts skills and 20 increased attack speed. +3 is the best you could get for skills. If you can't really afford those, you could get something maybe like a Laying of Hands that gives some fire resistance if you're lacking and increased attack speed, just in case you can't find gloves with any plus skills to them, but I'm sure you can. For charms, I go with 9 martial art grand charms with 40 life. I know 45 is max on, but I got 40 here. I have a assassin torch, an Annie, few 20 life, 5 resistance small charms, and then some 3 20/20s. On the Switch, I have my Calling to Arms and Spirit Shield, and that's pretty much my gear that I use for this build. For the Mercenary, I gave him an Eth Fortitude. I gave him an Eth Infinity Cryptic Axe. Infinity really helps with this build with the charges being elemental, and when you hit with the trigger attack, it just eliminates the enemy's resistances, so this helps a lot. And then I put a Dream Helmet on him for you. So this is the Phoenix Strike Assassin. It's a very fun build if you want to try something different than the original Trap Assassin. You could solo with this build. You don't have to have extremely good gear, even though I do here. If you want to test this out, again, the link will be in the description for you to download it. It'll be on my Patreon. You don't have to subscribe to my Patreon, but you might have to create an account to download the files. And I'm going to end this video with showing how it's played. So thanks again for tuning in and checking out my video. I will keep more builds coming. Thanks.